So I really wanted to record the progress of the beans, and I made a pretty good video a few days ago, and I uploaded it to Premiere on YouTube, and it just disappeared. I don't know if the kids deleted it, or maybe I didn't wait for it to upload, and I deleted all the footage out of my cloud space, so it's just gone. But these beans and the okra were popping up within 2 to 3 days, and here we are, about a week later. And they are just massive. These are all the different varieties of bush beans that I showed the packages for in the videos of what I was planting. I don't even remember what all there was. There were some standard like bush lake beans. There were the red swan beans, the Thai long beans, all bush varieties, all planted together. I really want to improve the nitrogen in the soil, but I also want to get a lot of food really fast. So beans are a great option. They create their own nitrogen, so they're not gonna be deficient when with all this mulch that still hasn't broken down. You can see the soil starting to kind of break down underneath it, and it's turning into really great soil. So a couple seasons of getting some good nitrogen in, and hopefully it'll make all the difference in the world. I didn't remember shoving beans in here, but I did. Or maybe one of the kids when they were helping me did. We've just been shoving food in all these empty spaces. The goal this year is not to make sense, it's to grow food. I just felt like a huge weight on me to just plant and plant and plant everything that I've been storing. And so that's what I'm doing right now, is just planting everything I've been storing so I can kind of allocate that money I've been spending at the grocery store somewhere else, maybe on meat, until our meat animals are large enough to really help us be more self-sufficient. What is that? Oh, that's the bean shell. I thought there was a fungus on my beans. You can see they are just popping up everywhere. This one was one of the first ones to pop up and starting to get some really good true leaves on it. I'm pretty sure these are just really large seed leaves. Same for here. They're popping up. And when I say they're growing everywhere. Whew. It is raining outside. I could not find my umbrella. It's not heavy raining, so it's enough to make me look crazy living in a neighborhood in the city. Videoing my plants. That's okay. Sometimes you have to be a little crazy to get the job done, but something about the rain is really invigorating for me, and showing off my plants just makes it all worth it. So showing off my plants in the rain makes being out here worth it, but I like the rain a lot. It's really calming, and it helps cool me down. It's so hot in this part of Texas. Look at all these random plants popping up. Those are actually my Clemson spineless okra. This is my F2. I grew all the plants last year I saved seeds from, and they were producing until December, and I just saved all the seeds and got them in the ground now because I knew I could produce a lot of okra really quickly for fall garden. And so they have an incredible taproot, so they're just going to drill through all of this clay soil and really just help break everything up, and when I pull them out, it'll have the same effect as the mint, just pulling them out and loosening all the soil at the same time. Now look at this. These are my gypsy peppers. I've never grown them before. I see them turning red on other people's videos and pictures, but mine are turning purple. And since I didn't start these from seed, I'm really starting to wonder if I ended up with a totally different type of pepper altogether. Like, what's going on? I have no idea. Oh my gosh, look at this Thai basil. This is probably one of my favorite basil plants of all time. This is a volunteer. I grew one here last year, and this one popped up. These gorgeous purple flowers. They're absolutely breathtaking. That's got to be one of my favorite herbs to ever grow. Ever. My peppers are getting massive. They stun.
Are you done?
Yep. Sam is picking his blackberry because we came outside and there is the first ripe fall blackberry on our Arkansas Traveler blackberry plants. Did it break? Let's see. Oh, it sure did. It's actually kind of red on the inside.
Okay.
This is about half the size as usual, but each individual berry is actually pretty big. If you don't know this, it's actually a really cool fact. Blackberries are not a single berry, but they're actual multiple ovaries.
What?
And they're actually multiple berries in a cluster, but they just look like a single berry. Do you know that, Sam?
Yes, I did.
Oh, yeah.
These look.
Yeah.
Yeah, just blank.
So this is it's a pretty big blackberry for being half the size they usually are, but it kind of signals that the season is beginning for fall here, because these produce blackberries twice a year. Oh, that's pretty cool.
After 2 minutes.
After 2 minutes?
Yes.
You're silly.
But yeah, this time. Let's stop talking.
So you can kind of see where the blackberries are just traveling all the way down. Hey Sam, come check this out. There's a actual flower still, a pretty good sized flower right here. So I would definitely say that the fall blackberry season is beginning, and it's really cool. This is the first year that we'll have blackberries in the fall. Last year we planted these berry plants, and the spring we had berries, and now we're having our second crop of berries, which I heard that they produce a pretty solid bumper crop. But this is the first year that we've gotten berries off the plant, so we know about as much as everyone else watching this knows. So if you know about how well the Arkansas Travelers produce their berries, please let me know, because I'm really curious. But on top of this, look at how thick these vines are getting. Now this is all 1 year growth on our muscadine grape cross, and so it's growing pretty well, and it's actually getting pretty thick. But this is our second year growing this, and the second full year is ending. And so the grapevine's at least 2 years old. I heard they were about 3 years old when we purchased them, so that makes them going on 5 years of age. It takes a substantial amount of time for muscadines to really start producing. Sometimes in 5 years, sometimes you're looking 7 to 10 before you really start seeing grape production. And these 3 muscadines are the first grapes I've ever grown in my entire life, so I'm still learning a lot. I don't know very much about them. There's so many different types of muscadine grapes. The only thing I know for sure is that they are self-fertile, and it is a cross between 2 different muscadine varieties. But unfortunately, that's really all I know. So I guess we're going to learn about it together. So you can see where there's a lot of leaves dropping. At first I thought that these had rust when they started getting this, but they really don't. They come back, the leaves die, new leaves form. It's really not that big of a deal. If I see a lot of dead growth or blackberry gall, I have a video where there is actually a blackberry gall, which is a giant hard spot on your blackberries, and it can be produced by either a bacterial infection or insects. Ours was a bacterial infection, and I cut it open and you could see the bacteria. It kind of looked like a moldy growth, so we took that off, and that was on a different plant, and we haven't had any issues yet. If we start seeing blackberry gall all over our plants, it means that it's in our soil, and we'll just have to destroy all of the plants. I'm not really sure if there's any way to heal that. I've heard of various home remedies, but I don't know. It seems like more hassle than it's worth. It took all season, but we're finally getting tomatoes to produce. I kind of went on a whim of faith and decided to keep my tomatoes in the ground, even though it was extremely hot all summer and they did very poorly, just to see if they would start producing now that the weather's cooling off and we're getting a significant amount of rain. And there are a ton of flowers right here, and even more forming up here. The plants look extremely healthy, except for the lack of growth from where we had a hornworm, but that I did peel off. But now they look really healthy, and they're all growing. I have tomatoes that are above this fence that are easily over 5 foot tall, and 2 weeks ago they were not even anywhere close to that. So they're growing pretty rapidly. You can see, though, we still have some, like this leaf is curled because there's a green worm inside of it, which is likely a baby tomato hornworm. So I just have to really kind of stay on top of it because pests are still very real here. I'm still not having any good luck growing any kind of squash because the squash bugs are still everywhere. You can see the adults just hanging out on everything. That I'm not even sure if I'll ever be able to grow squash in Texas. I know a lot of people do. I'm just not one of them. It's very successful. However, the cucumbers, which are very closely related, are doing really well. They're popping up and they're really starting to take off. I decided to plant a bush variety this time because I don't have space on the trellis. It's just completely taken over between the blackberries and the grapevine. So I'm hoping that this will kind of fill the space and fall over the garden bed, and that way we can maximize our growth. Now, for a while I thought that there was a lack of nitrogen in the soil, but I see how well these blackberries are growing, so I'm really thinking it's not that there's a lack of nitrogen. It actually may be that in this soil the pH is slightly lower because I use acidifier, because plants such as tomatoes and blackberries really like a more acidic soil, and so it may just be too acidic for my other plants such as the cucumbers. But I went ahead and I planted beans to see if while they're fixing their own nitrogen they'll do well, because if so, then I can get beans in between all of these spaces too. But it's really just an experiment. So I'm really impressed with the growth of this blackberry. There are all of the side growth is kind of coming off of it. I didn't know what to expect because when I first planted these last year, I heard that they only produce on the new growth, but that's not on the new growth. They only produce on last year's growth, but while I've seen them produce on last year's growth, they're also producing berries on this year's growth. And that blackberry I showed earlier was off of growth from just a few weeks ago. So, and all of this is new growth too. It's kind of shooting off of the branches, creating a ton of growth. This is a ridiculous size plant. They're supposed to be 4 foot tall and 4 foot wide. These branches are over 12 feet long, and they go all the way down. They go all the way up here, and they kind of combine together. And then I also noticed that these plants, their roots are rooting out, and then they're creating more plants over here. So this branch right here is actually, it spread all by itself from the first plant that I planted. So I'm really curious exactly how the berry production works. I've seen, I go to Arkansas State University, I believe, and their website, and I kind of try to follow it, but there's just not a ton of information that I see on these thornless blackberries. So I'm really looking for as much information as I can find. And unfortunately, it looks a lot like I'm going to have to trial and error it and kind of keep records of everything as I grow these plants to really see how they grow, and so others can see as well, because that's one frustrating thing about growing new plants in the garden, or if you're like me and you're fairly new to gardening in this style or gardening certain plants and growing them. I'm still learning what I'm doing. There are so many things that I don't know, and that's really cool when people kind of comment and can give me some information from their personal experiences, because really when I first started growing everything, I had no idea what was going on. And even though I love watching gardening on YouTube, there are a lot of things that you just don't know and you don't cover. So my hope is to kind of cover everything that I possibly can that I would have liked to know when I was starting, and even now, and then maybe it'll help someone else out in the future, which is really nice. And also, I like to go back. Sometimes I feel discouraged thinking things are growing slow or it's taking a long time, and I go back and I see where this grapevine was literally only 2 feet tall last year, and now it's 12 feet in one direction and taking off in both directions, and then still trying to take over my blackberries. So I'm definitely going to have to trellis this bad boy, make a huge trellis so it can kind of climb over everything. The idea is in this space right here, there's this huge space that's about 12 foot wide. And I'm going to put a trellis over the top of it and have a little gate. So it'll be a cool area kind of gated in to go into the kids area, but also it'll provide a space that we can grow fruit and grapes and kind of the blackberries. It's a nice, cool green fence, which I really enjoy. Now, of course, our clean out here, and we accidentally ran it over. with a lawnmower. But our clean out's right here. So that's another thing that we wanted to consider. I can't just put another one of these composting cages here and let everything grow over it, because, well, that's not going to do me very good. I won't be able to access the clean out if I ever need to. So that wasn't really an option. It seems that a trellis really is the best option. These wild plants growing, and I wasn't sure what they are, but I'm pretty sure they're vineweed. I saw some in the back that had morning glory type flowers. That's not lovely because they're quite invasive. They take over everywhere. Another thing that we really battle is wild dewberries, which is basically a wild blackberry. They're very closely related. They get in everything, and I worry about that because they carry viruses that can take out my Arkansas Traveler blackberries. So I'm really always worried that we're going to end up with some kind of virus in there. And then here we are. This has absolutely nothing in it. I have this white trellis kind of up, and it was 16 feet long, but we accidentally knocked some of it down, so it's at least 12 feet. I have no idea what to plant in here. This dries out really rapidly, so it's great for rainy season, but you can see what the soil is really nice. All the compost is broken down deep down, and it's actually really good soil, so figuring out what to plant there. I tried planting cucumbers, but the sunlight was just beating down on them because there's no shade around here, and it killed them within a very short period of time. They just couldn't handle it. Now that it's cooler, it might be a good time maybe to plant some beans. I do have one packet of vining beans. I could try some vining cucumbers, but I have so many bush varieties of cucumber planted, or at least the seeds of a few varieties. I don't think that I need any more cucumbers this season. That might be a bit much. And here are all our bananas. Aren't they just... I show them at least once a week, but I'm still amazed by how fast. This leaf right here has grown by a foot within the last few days. It's absolutely insane to me. So I'm excited to kind of see them undercover and exactly where we're going to go. It's really cool. Now they are spreading like crazy. Here are some more. If I wanted to, I could just take a shovel and kind of make sure I get enough root and take that off of the mother plant and create a whole new area, and that banana would eventually establish a pretty good webbing of roots and just take off, and I would have a whole nother grove of bananas in a different area of the yard. And I may do that. These bananas are actually planted. My son planted them, and they are his pride and joy. This is kind of their play area, their garden, and it's really cool. They'll sit underneath them and hang out and everything else during the winter, but during the summer nobody's coming outside. It is so hot. There's just no way to convince a bunch of children to come play in 100+ degree weather. Over here I have my Tabasco plant, and it was pretty stunted because we were in a drought and I did not do a good job of watering it. We spent most of the summer pretty sick, and my plants had to fend for themselves. But this is pretty cool. I wanted to see how fast it would change if I left them on, because they're a yellowish green color. This Tabasco is, and it's changed to orange, and now I think it's going to change to red and then maybe purple. I'm just leaving it on here. I know it can lower production, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm really curious. I grew all these Tabascos thinking I'd make homemade Tabasco sauce. Absolutely not. I tried eating one of these peppers like a crazy person, and it was way too hot for me. I'm a crybaby when it comes to hot food, and I'm the one who eats the hottest food in the house. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with all these peppers. You can see how many are just forming now that it started to cool off and that they're getting a substantial amount of rain. Everything's really coming to life, and these peppers are doing so well. There's a lot of flower formation, a lot of fruit formation, and these are babies compared to how big they fit. I mean, you're talking about a 3-foot tall, 3-foot wide bush easily when they're growing properly. So this bush, with the average frost date not coming until late November and last year not coming until late December, we're talking about a pretty good amount of peppers being produced. Last year I had green beans producing around Christmas time. I was growing green beans in my garden, if that tells you anything. And then I switched to peas, and even though we had a pretty good freeze come February, I was harvesting peas from my garden already. So we got a pretty substantial harvest. I still have peas in my freezer that I grew in February. If that tells you how mild our growing season really is, that I can pretty much grow food all year round without